What's up, everybody? Today, I'm delighted to have Graham Pardun back to practice some conversation craft with us here in the Yours Truly virtual studio. These screens are fascinating. We can gaze upon a person, hear them speak. We can begin to even know and understand them. But until you enter into a conversation face to face, you are an observer. But something truly inspiring that someone like Paul Vanderklay has done is allow the observer, the consumer, of and in this place to begin to become a person of and in this little corner of the internet. Such a thing happened a few months ago when I got on one of those Friday afternoon live stream Q&As with Paul Vanderklay talking about the Orthodox Church, something I probably shouldn't be talking about, but I have. And a few days later, got an email from a Graham Pardun. I had no idea who this guy was. I didn't know he had been Orthodox since before it was cool, or that he was an author published by Martin Shaw's publishing house, or that his book had been endorsed by Paul Kingsnorth, or that he had been on a guest on Glenn Scrivener's Speak Life podcast and Paul hears his Heavy Things Lightly, or that he would soon be a featured speaker at the Northwest Estuary Conference, Encountering Face to Face. He was just some guy that said, hey, man, I think I was picking up on what you were putting down, and I'd love to have a conversation, which was enough for me because something that I discovered when I turned on this camera and uploaded a video to YouTube was that I was reaching back out, hoping to touch a reality that I had only participated in as a consumer in my mind. And I decided I would not simply be fed by the gods of TV set or cellular phone, but through the eye of Horus, I would reach into this matrix and begin to find real people on the other side. I would begin to play. I would begin to participate. And I would begin to relate to people who had also been consuming and were tired of that singular mode of being a consumer glutton, but rather would build relationships, reclaim the lost art of conversation, and maybe even find a friend or two. In the way that it seems it can happen, there was resonance and a shared frequency between Graham and myself that seemed to make sense in the throes of this meaning crisis that we find ourselves in. And we begin such a conversation, which you can listen to here. If you'd like to support the channel, give it a like and a subscribe. If it makes sense, share with friends. And if you believe yours truly is something that might be considered worthwhile, you can support the channel financially by becoming a channel member. So check that out, link in the description. I invited Graham back to yours truly today to follow up with his experience at the Northwest Estuary Conference. And also as a part of a series of conversations I'm centering around the idea and topic of creativity. So go ahead, clock into work, start some chores, nurse your infant, hit the road, and utilize the newfound time we've all discovered in recent years. And join me in today's conversation with Graham as we think out loud together here on the Yours Truly podcast. So without any further delay, I give you Graham Pardun. Hi, this is Christian Baxter, and you're listening to Yours Truly, a place we go to think out loud.
Man, that was a really good intro, man.
Dude, last time I had used AI to try to mess with the intro, and you completely was like acclaimed. I would never use the word acclaimed. I was like, I had to up my game, with a writer, a very serious writer, for my little bits of writing that I do. So there we go.
Well, man, that was a delight just sitting and listening. I could tell that a real human being wrote that. I mean, it's super. Yeah, it's alive.
Good. Yeah, man. That's what I want a part of our conversation today to be about is creativity. And I feel like those little intros are something, I think a lot of people skip through them, but they're not really for everybody. They're kind of for me to frame what I'm doing, and for maybe the guest that I forced to listen to it, but yeah, man. So thanks for coming back on. You recently, you were invited to be a speaker at the Northwest Estuary Conference. That's kind of in the Paul Vanderklay world, the estuary world, Grail Country kind of sponsored. You're friends with Sherry, who is a kind of a leader in Grail country. Talk about that experience, if you don't mind, to get started, just wherever you want to go with it, like just the experience of what that kind of meant to you.
Yeah. I'm still, it's been however long it's been. I don't know how long it's been now. It was kind of in its own time warp. So the conference was in dream time. And I've been, I've done some conversations like this, trying to unpack it. I've done a lot of thinking on my own. I've tried to do some writing. My Substack has been crickets lately. I'm just like, everything's really, really internal right now. I try to do some writing about it, but the words aren't touching it yet. The first thing, this morning I was starting to think about, man, I'm so pumped about talking with Christian. This is great. And also, I don't even remember what we were going to talk about. So like, what we're going to talk about, should I start thinking about some stuff? And then, I was like, oh yeah, I think the conference a little bit. And the thing that kept coming to my head this morning was just the intensity of people's faces.
Mm.
Like, I don't know, Paul Vanderklay said something. I mean, he's been doing a lot of processing too. And he said like something like Grizz is way more three-dimensional in real life. He's got like substance to it. Like, and that, I didn't know a lot of these people. I mean, I had watched some of his stuff. But like, as soon as I walked into that, the barbecue at Nate's house, the first night, and I saw Grizz, it's like I keep thinking of like the Transfiguration, where there's the human body that we're used to. We go about our business, we see people, those are people, and then all of a sudden, like, wow, there's way more there. And like the scales fall off your eyes, and somebody's face is shining like the sun, and it's like Peter's like, let's build some tents or something, we got to stay here, and this is amazing. and then it's over. And that kind of, so then you're reverberating in the after effects of that. And like the last 2,000 years of the mess of Christian history is like this reverberation of the after effects, just like, what the heck do we do with that? And we have no idea what to do with it. I mean, I don't think we have any idea what to do with that. Some people think we know exactly what to do with that. But it's like, wow, we saw something, we don't even know how to unpack it. But the effect of seeing people in the flesh. Now, I see people in the flesh all the time. I'm a human, I live on the planet. You're a human, you live on the planet. We interact with people. That's normal. But somehow this, like, the context of having seen people not in the flesh and then coming together in the flesh was not just like, oh yeah, so good to meet you, I've been following your stuff online, like, enjoy your content, yeah, cool. It was like the Transfiguration, like people's faces were shining, like overpowering in a way. And I don't know, that probably sounds really stupid and hokey, but
the word I keep hearing, like, as you're saying this, is glory. Like seeing somebody in their full glory, as opposed to these kind of two-dimensional, high or low resolution images, that, and the Transfiguration was like seeing Christ in the fullness of his glory or something, and then I guess a fractal of that glory that we see in, like you said, we're around it all the time, but whenever we've been trying maybe to relate to this person, but it's through a mirror darkly, it's through a veil, and then the veil is is you know, as you see the person in in reality, you see their true glory. And I don't know. That's
Yeah.
that's what I'm kind of hearing. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, totally. And it's, you know, I'm interested in the Hebrew language. I'm very ignorant, but I'm just, I'm amateur. I love poking around in it and learning things. But the word for glory, chabad, I hope I'm saying that right, is like, it more literally means weight or like solidity.
So yeah.
And C.S. Lewis, the weight of glory, like plays on that. But it's like things that are described as emanating glory in the Hebrew Bible are like sensed to be way more real, like solid. Like the solidity is radiating out, like there's something really there, and that somethingness is just like rippling out and smacking us beautifully in the face. And so it's interesting that there's a connection between the idea of solidness or solidity and beauty or radiance or light, physical light. Because of course, light seems, we think of it as insubstantial. It's electromagnetic waves or whatever. Holograms are just light. But
this is just light right now, even like what we're seeing of each other. Apparently Peugeot talked about that it's deceiving in a sense because we actually are emanating like as almost like light on a screen. And and we're subject to the contrast and the pixelation and all this stuff, where when we're in the real, in the solid, it's a more solid reality. It's a more real. Not that there isn't something real here. There is something real, but it's not the fullness of reality. And we, we could all talk about that. But what's interesting is in these encounters, I had that experience going to Symbolic World back in February because I had a conversation. I had seen Graham online. I had a conversation with a guy named Justin Wells, and I had a conversation with Jordan Hall, and then I got to see those people, and I got to see, I'd seen Nate too, and so I did have that experience. It was very odd, but and overwhelming. And so that sounds like that was a big piece of that initial encounter. And then I was curious, Paul highlighted your talk, he's highlighted all the plenary sessions and stuff, but he seemed to feel like or think that yours was, I don't know, if controversial or evocative or provocative in its nature. What was kind of driving you in preparation to share with this, group of people? Like, what was bubbling inside of you to bring you to that place? I mean, it's in our last conversation, to bring people up to speed on that, a little context, you seemed at that point to kind of be in a wilderness in your faith, as an Orthodox Christian, and even dealing with some uncertainty. And then kind of, it seems like you kind of came through that in a way. So you kind of came through it, and then you go to this conference and it's like, what is Christianity?
Yeah.
What was bubbling? What was driving that?
Man, I'm a mess. Yeah, I did. Yeah, last time we talked, I was not going to church with my family. I was just going for walks barefoot in the forest and praying and listening to the birds and stuff. And heck, man, when it's October like this, I'm like, yeah, get me back in the woods. I can't stand being in church, man. Like weather like this, blue sky, fresh breeze, the changing leaves, and like that's, the earth is my temple. That's kind of my deepest home base in my heart is that feeling. But I was in that pretty heavy when we talked last, and then but at the cost of being with my family in church. You know, they're hardcore. You know, they're locked in, and I'm happy for them. You know, it helps to be locked in and have a framework that you accept and surrender to and work within. That's nice. You know, that's good. We need that. But my kids were confused. You know, they're, you know, anxious. Like, why is Papa not coming with us? And that hurt a lot. And I didn't want to. Yeah, that wasn't worth it to me. And that was kind of the emotional background behind, you know, maybe like an intellectual, philosophical, poetic like return that I wrote about on my Substack. And then what happened? Because with the talk, I was like, basically like Christianity is the problem. but why? You know, really, what was prompting it is, for a long time I've had questions. For a long time I've been really curious and like actually open-minded, in the sense that I'm happy to change my mind. I actually long to change my mind. I'm not going to do it for a stupid reason, but if I read something or have a conversation and somebody's got a higher perspective, I want to, you know, surrender and accept that. You know, I love that feeling. I don't feel any need to stake out some territory and defend it, you know, tooth and nail. I'm not interested in that. I'm really interested in opening up my vision. And I learned this from my friend Henry in high school. You know, he was the only guy I knew that he would change his mind literally in the middle of an argument. You know, everybody else thought the game was like, everybody's got their sides and they duke it out over lunch. And like, you know, you think that you came away with a win and they think they came away with a win. He would literally just stop and say, "Oh yeah, you're right." And then like with his entire heart, completely be convinced and just change the way he thought and acted, you know, from that onward. So, I love that too. I mean, it's really liberating and beautiful and life-giving to change my mind. So I'm curious in that sense. I want to see something new. I'm not easily satisfied. I hate rigid systems of thought with a like complete hatred. And so I've got these questions that have been like really agonizing me for quite a while, and I'm trying to figure out how to field those questions, who to field them to. My wife says that I write really provocative stuff as if I know what I'm talking about, when I really just mean to ask questions. And that she's right. I mean, she's always right about everything, but I try to say provocative stuff. I mean, it's just like a different style of phrasing the question. So whenever I'm harping on something that's really like not the kind of thing that would, for example, please an ortho bro, that might actually make them pretty anxious and defensive. It's because I'm posing a question, because it'd be amazing if somebody responded and said, well, actually, here's the way to think about this. So I long for that. I think I found in my Substack, I kind of pigeonholed myself as an Orthodox writer and got this kind of Orthodox audience, and found that really Orthodox people generally are not really understanding the questions I'm posing. And largely it's my fault, because I act like I know what I'm talking about, and like, this is the way it is, and the way you think it is like, that's completely garbage.
Well, the
so
name,
I'm looking for
the name ortho, right,
yeah.
praise, we're right.
It is what it sounds like. Yeah.
So, that's difficult. But there was in our last conversation, there was a space though for you to land in a way, it felt like, in that framework. But
yeah, it is. I
but
mean, it is very spacious. It yeah, there's
like
a place for everyone.
maybe to a place to be able to explore the mystical, which doesn't have the kind of boundaries that other forms of religious thought seem to have, like within
Yeah,
rationality and such. So
yeah,
uh, that makes
yeah,
sense. But the other part of it, kind of the more dogmatic side of it, maybe that you're brushing up against that, but even your, the people that, the earlier part when you were talking about being within nature, um, and I think about the people that really pushed your vision of orthodoxy, whether that's King's North or Martin Shaw, like that's right up their alley. Like, and even like that, they resonate with something there, which is, Paul being an environment, a type of environmentalist, and Martin being kind of this go out into the woods and tell stories around a camp. Like, there's resonance there, and they also were drawn into orthodoxy. So it seems like there's something there, but at the same time, there's a wrestling wrestling with other parts of it. So I think that's interesting.
yeah.
That's how
There's
that's kind of when you're talking, that's what I was kind of the framework that I was starting to put into it.
definitely. Early on, I was talking to Paul, um, and I was totally new to this. I didn't expect anyone to read my book. I just
Yeah.
wrote it for myself, and he got into it, and so I was like, all right, here we go. I'm walking out into the wide, wide world. Now I'm gonna find my people, and 'cause I mean, I wrote it thinking like I cannot be the only person who feels this way.
Yeah.
There's no way. So, and I think in general, my writing is really just like a flag I'm putting up to see if anybody else belongs to that country. So I asked them, um, but so who else is out there like Philip Sherrard? And like a lot of my nature stuff just comes straight from Sherrard. He's my guy. And I know Martin and Paul both dig him, and but he's kind of a fringe guy in Orthodoxy. He's like the David Bentley Hart of the previous generation. Who else is out there that's writing this kind of stuff? And he's like, just Philip Sherrard. I was like, wow, oh no, that means we're out here alone. Like I thought,
but not anymore.
Like,
not anymore, and not anymore, because we're two or more gathered, my man.
That's two or more. Yeah, so, yeah, or two or more. Yeah, exactly. But to complete my answer to the original question, what was I thinking with the conference talk?
Sure.
I just want to come full circle there. That
yeah,
I did that because my sense was this little corner, like that's the kind of people to ask my questions with. That's why I did that. It was always provocative or evocative or annoying, or you read the comments like,
you had some fans.
Horrifying. What's that?
I think you had some fans on the Vanderklay stream. On that there were some people that liked what you were saying. I don't know if I understood. Cool. I don't know. I didn't understand all of it. I listened to it, and but that I was having a conversation actually with my therapist, and this week, because I think where I resonate with you is that I am an idealist. We get these ideas, we receive these images or these visions of what could or should, and then reality is like, not, and maybe that's the weight of glory. I don't know, but that's what I was hearing I think, was like, what do we do when we're curious, when we encounter some beautiful idea or inspiring idea, and then we walk into the world and it's like, well, the idea came from somewhere, but I can't find out how to walk into it, how to exist within it or something. And so I don't know. That's what was with that conversation I had yesterday, in some reflection for myself. Then when I was listening back through your talk again, like, that angst I relate to. I don't know. So I don't know. That's how that would be my. You're in the corner. This is a corner of the corner, and this is me hearing you and being like, yeah, well, that's where I feel connected to you. And I do think that that's probably a lot of people, I mean, we got heretics and, Jewish people and all sorts of, like searching for these ideals that, or at least talking about them, that we don't maybe find sometimes in certain spaces.
Yeah. And totally, man. And it goes the other way too, where reality is like way better than the idea. And then the reality takes us by surprise. I think whatever ideas I had about like what would make a perfect conference, or what are these people going to be like, or what do I want to be like? What image do I want to portray?
Mm-hmm.
Anything I thought about the conference was not at all relevant to the reality of encountering these people. And there's a beauty and solidity in the human body. I mean, okay, yeah, we're projecting light right now, and it's pixelated, and but our faces are here. That's nice. That is a reality, but our heads are chopped off from the rest of their context, and Paul Vanderklay talked in his really good intro talk at the conference about like this metaphor of like above and below the surface of the water. Like there's things that we know that we don't know that we know that just come out in that face-to-face small circle, doing estuary conversations together, even and that's true. Like people just bring forth their knowledge out of their bodies when they're in a circle together, in a way that is more fluid than, I mean, you and I have to think real hard and try, we're trying hard, and this is great and this is wonderful. But if we were in the same room, it would be flowing better, because there's everything else, bringing reality into it. I found with my estuary group that we were a bunch of quiet people. We were a bunch of shy people, and we sat in silence a lot. And the beauty of, I can't even describe, like, just, and these people I'd never seen online, talked to online. My first time meeting them was walking in the door in that little, it's probably a first grade Sunday school room in the church basement with like tiny chairs, primary colors on the wall. And that was my first time meeting any of these people. And we were quiet, and we just sat in a circle, and the sunlight was like radiating off the grass outside, and just like, and like that was worth the whole conference. I mean, there's a lot of things that were wonderful about the conference, but just like the moments of silence with 6 other people in a room was far more real, more beautiful, more transformative than any ideas I had So I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, what is it that, you know, the truncated time that, you know, I don't know if your church does, probably doesn't do Sunday school with adults or anything, but like where do we find the space in our modern day to sit with 6 people? You know, some churches do like small group and stuff, but it's usually hurried and pretense, and like everyone's still in their kind of like busy flow of, and then there's this kind of just the small talk liturgy and but we're, you know, sitting with the weight of why even you bought a plane ticket to come to this place, to, you know, or something. And because you've been inspired by some big ideas, but also because you're alone on a screen, you know, doing your, like I mentioned, like the people that are driving trucks right now, or that they're nursing their kid, or that, you know, like there's just people like alone listening, and then all this, but to then be like, okay, finally I made it here and I'm with people and we're sharing space and breath and light, and wow. And I just want to like soak that up or something. I want to try to embody that like as fully as I can, or whatever. That makes sense. And that is, I think that's part of the meaning crisis. You said something about the, you know, music and kumbaya, more kumbaya next time, like around campfire or something like that. And because that's kind of what you're talking about there too, is like, now we're all talking about is, there was a time in our history, and probably not even that long ago, like I would even say something like pub culture, you know, and other, there's other things, but even further back, where we've lost that, and we're trying to, you know, that's what also like reach back into this, you know, this thing to try to find a little bit of it. And then I don't know, it's very strange, you know, we're in a strange time, and
Amen to that. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. You and I are both very idealistic. That is true. We relate on that. And also, it really doesn't seem like it should be asking too much to want to sit together with 5 or 6 people and really listen to each other. That's not, but yeah, but you're pointing out, it's like, that's so, where do we, like, we don't have that. And why is that so unattainable? Why is that so out of reach? That's not, I mean, we're not asking to go back 1,000 years to like liturgies and the Hagia Sophia with like 200 priests. Like you can you can devote your life to trying to reconstruct that kind of world. That's an idealism that's going to be met with probably like quite a bit of frustration, because that's we're not going there again. But an idealism that's like, I really just want to sit in a circle with people who also want to sit in a circle, and I want to listen to those people, and I want those people to listen to me, and I want to know those people, and I want those people to know me, and I want to be okay with just being in silence with those people. Why is that too much to ask? And why, I mean, it was kind of in a way like so poignant and almost heartbreaking, to like the conference was all these people who are so lonely and just want to just talk with people, you know. And it was like we all came from far away. Well, you know, some people live in Olympia, but a lot of people came from so far away. One of my readers went on a harrowing journey by Amtrak train over mountains and through valleys, and sounded like there were a lot of crackheads on the train or something. I don't know. I was like, wow, thank God I'm, you know,
And they showed
You
up
made
to
it.
the
Thank God.
conference.
Yeah.
One
She's
of
amazing.
the readers from your Substack came to kind of be a part and to participate with you.
Yeah. How amazing.
Wow.
She was amazing. But all these people, like, spent time, money, effort to like just come and to know and be known. And it's sort of and now, a lot of,
Well,
you remember Avatar?
what that's making me think is because a lot of the space is downstream from the kind of Jordan Peterson phenomenon culturally. But a part of that was to to speak. Part of his whole first thing was about speech, actually, like culturally, and that I felt like afraid to be known or afraid to maybe say what we think. And where do we find that place? Because because of the cell phone, people were and still are, but like going into very deconstructed from like the TV, deconstructed into these, Grimm would say into these cells, isolated individual cells. But in these cells, we were all maybe paying attention to the same thing, but we were all dispersed over hundreds and thousands of miles. The ones that were paying attention to the same thing. No longer was it we were all watching the news together and then going to work to talk about it. Who knows what news you're watching? It may not even be on television, and then you're listening to this idiosyncratic Orthodox thinker, like who has, a Substack, like who out of 330 million people in this United States, there's like, there's people really paying their attention to your work, just like the lady that drove around on the train. But it's like, who do I talk to about this? Who do I talk to about this? It's a very strange time. And that's why I got on here, was because I really couldn't find the substance related to the people that had paid attention to the same thing I had paid attention to. Because there were thousands, there were even probably hundreds of thousands of people, but spread out over geography. And we're in a time in history where that's pretty new. Because for better or for worse, mass media, like everyone maybe watched Friends the night before. Some of the last things that we did was as a culture, was watch The Office together. And one of the very last things everyone did, millennials at least, was watch Game of Thrones. Like, and now it's like, that's almost gone. So instead, people are watching, Christian Baxter, like and that's so idiosyncratic. And who do I talk to about this random guy in nowhere, Arkansas? Like, that's weird. So I don't know, man. That's kind of, I think that's part of the practical side of what's bringing people together. But it's also spiritual. It's also, because I don't know. At some point you get in, you're like, well, I'm not into my friends that I talk to, I'm not even into sports, or I'm not into, there's just few things. And then in our, I don't know, that's how it hits me. That's what kind of makes some sense out of it to me, of why there seems to be an impetus. And why I think even with the estuary stuff that it's going to I think it's going to turn into regional things. I think it's going to keep being, Northwest, Midwest. I think it is going to be regional because that it is kind of a network effect. So I don't know, man. That's me bouncing back my theses related to, the Grim Grizz, but I don't know. Unless there's something you want to like feedback off of that, I wanted to move into a conversation with you as a creative person about creative process, about how you view yourself in that process. But I don't know if there was something else you wanted to share along those lines with estuary and stuff.
just one thing from what you just said. I think that's part of the beauty of the estuary concept, in this like maximum dispersal fragmentation reality that we're in right now, where you can connect to whatever stream of content you want, and so there's almost no unifying factor, and you got to like desperately try to find people that also stream the same thing. The beauty of the idea of estuary overcomes that fragmentation, in that one of the rounds is you go in a circle and just say what's really alive for you right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my group, we didn't talk about Jordan Peterson at all. we didn't, we didn't.
I think that we're like on a, that was a wave, and there's like kind of a new wave. But
there was no need to have mastered Jordan Peterson, like his vocabulary. There wasn't a need to know the vocabulary of this little corner. There was only a need to be a suffering human being. And people, and there were Christians in my group, there were non-Christians, there was some, like a like as a mix, and we didn't really have much mental content necessarily in common, but we all had life. I'm feeling lonely. I'm feeling like I don't have a home right now. I'm feeling like I need to like find my people that I belong to, like just very, very universal, fundamental human things. And so, the solidity of the human body, like everybody who has lived and suffered, there's like an infinite well of content to bring forth and share with other people.
Well, definitely,
you just have to get together physically in the same space, but then also have the tiny bit of culture, which is, here's the procedure. Don't interrupt. We're going to go in a circle, and this, everybody's going to say this thing in the circle, and then we're going to do another circle, and then it'll be free flowing conversation. Just there's a tiny bit of culture, but really like the main thing was physical proximity and having lived and suffered.
I had a conversation with a young man that was there. Afrael is his screen name. And he was saying, I loved his illustration. He said it was kind of like the way the protocol that you were talking about is kind of like cranking an old engine to get it started. So you need like a one pull, two pull, and then that's it, and then it kind of the engine gets going. And you kind of describe that in a way, and I think that's really good. And that, as simple as that is, I guess what the hope in a certain way is that that goes back out, and people start these things, or it doesn't even have to be formalized, but you could like say it, get some people together, be like, hey, I do this thing, and let's try it out, and at a party or something. But that can help reintegrate a type of relationality that seems to be disembodied, for the most part now. And it's like, okay, well, we have these talking head conversations, but it isn't enough. But we find ourselves here, we're in the matrix, but we so we have to figure out how to get out and do it. So I think that is very good. And people, even like John here is like the Tomata work that he's doing, like the super Tom, like I think it's really some of the same thing that we're trying to reconnect with. So yeah, man. Well, let's shift to creativity. And you reach out and I'm like, I don't even know who this guy is. And I see like, okay, he writes a Substack, he's written a book. And when I think about you as a person, we've talked on the phone multiple times, and we've sent some stuff to each other, and you're the nature speaks to you. You've already said that in this very much. And so that you could talk about that, but how long have you known that? Or is that something you knew about yourself? Is that something, have you always been writing? Have you been writing since you were young? Like, what's the kind of process been like for you to either accept that about yourself, or begin to accept that about yourself, or understand that about yourself that you want to create?
Yeah. I think I've been writing forever. I don't know. I mean, I can't remember, you can't remember like all of your memories of childhood are all reconstructed, they're not real, or they're semi-real. Watching my son grow up, and he's 10 now. He composed his first and almost only poem when he was 4. He's totally lost interest in poetry, but he wrote a like smasher of a poem when he was 4, and I typed it up on the typewriter as he dictated to me. But he's not interested in poetry anymore, but he's like super interested in words. And he's really clever with words. He loves playing with words, bending the meaning of words. And I look at that and remember or misremember or construct artificial memories. I don't know, but it seems like that's the way I was when I was his age, like really attuned to words. And I remember, in school, whenever it was a writing assignment, I just loved that. I felt like I could like flex and be playful, and I felt like, in my element. I didn't really feel like I had much of a place anywhere. I'm like, yeah, it's hard to, I mean, I like people, I get along with people. I've always had friends, but I've never had friend groups. Because I never, I don't know, just, I always had all kinds of different friends from all kinds of different friend groups. But, so I was always felt like, I'm on the outside looking in. You've talked about this too. It's maybe everybody feels like this. Maybe everybody who's on the inside, it's like, I'm on the outside looking in. But with like when it came to words, though, I felt like I was in my element. In school, that was something that I belonged to. I remember we had typewriters, man, in elementary school. Heck yeah. And I just loved, we had typewriters and we had Apple IIe computers, those big and just like writing assignment. Like, I love that, man. That's the good stuff. So so to me, in my, possibly creatively imagined memory, like words have always been a thing. And my parents were creative with words. My mother's written books. My dad was like, he taught class, and they're just very good with words, clever with words. So it's always been there. So it's and I don't know where it comes from. I might have said this last time. I've probably said this everywhere I go. I'll just keep saying it. There's a quote on my wall that I typed with the typewriter from the poet A.R. Ammons. He said, "I desire the ease of wisdom, but have been unwilling to surrender the madness of poetry." And writing is definitely intertwined with my my inner chaos, my turmoil, my not having a place, my flightiness, my curiosity, my my iconoclasm, my rebel attitude. It's all like connected. It's all like, and it would be better to be like at peace. Writing comes from not being at peace. It would be better. I mean, I can acknowledge or at least recognize like it would be better to be at peace and like to think the things you're supposed to think, to feel the things you're supposed to feel, to be rooted, to be in a place, to belong to people, and
It would be better to
not
be
have
okay.
it would be better to be okay. You know, I desire that ease that would be like, I know what I'm doing and I can act naturally in every situation. And, you know, it would be nice, you know, I can imagine, but you know, I'm an idealist. But I am unwilling to surrender the madness. You know, I mean, it is a sickness, this like burning creativity that simultaneously wants to tear things down and build up new things. But I love it. I don't know whether I love it or not. I don't know. It's like it's there and it's there. You know, there's nothing I can do about it.
Do you identify as a creative person? Is that something you've thought about of yourself?
Yeah, I'm super creative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's something that's an identity that you've I mean, and then you said that your writing comes from like the chaos or the turmoil or the idealism that versus the reality or something like that. And how long is, I don't know how long, but do you feel like there's times you're more in touch with that, or is it just a constant thing for you that's always there that you can reach for? But it seems like you were trying to,
yeah.
I don't know, like inspiration, I guess, something along those lines. But
yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I'll go through depressions and feel lifeless and like there's nothing there. You know, the inner fire has departed. You know, the temple has been destroyed. And then it'll be the apocalypse again. And all right, you know. But I would say like the main cycle is it's kind of going. Where's my camera? I was trying to do some hand motion. They're not even helpful hand motions, so I'll just stop. The main cycle, imagine up and down waves, is between being really internal and really external. So right now I'm going through a really internal phase, you know. I haven't written for a while. And part of that's you know, I need to make money. So I'm like, so I started driving for UPS, but I'm a seasonal driver. So, you know, so I drove for a while and then I'm back on next Tuesday and I'll be gone again. And then, you know, the weather's been perfect. I've been working on my house and building, you know, we're building a home. So that's part of it. But part of it too is like after the conference, you know, that was the thing I wanted to say. And then after the conference, I just wanted to crawl into a hole. And I've heard other people say too that, yeah, they just entered into this like depressive state. I was thinking, remember Avatar? You're old enough to remember Avatar. Dude, like it was just, you know how everybody, like all these people got into post-Avatar depression, you know? It's like,
talking about the movie or the TV show?
Yeah.
Which one?
Movie.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't even, the first one.
What was the post-Avatar depression? I didn't know about this.
Oh yeah, you know, it's like, yeah, after the first movie, I haven't, you know, it's turned into a franchise. I haven't followed it, but like that after that first movie where it's like, oh yeah, we do belong to the forest, and like that's the world we want, and it's like we don't live there.
Yeah, it woke some people up. That mythic archetypal story, like Pocahontas, and it woke some people up in a way towards. Yeah, I see.
Yeah, and it was so beautiful that it's hard to return to the so-called real world. And I think post-conference depression is a thing too.
Yep.
Because we long for
A tribe.
just tribe. And like it was amazing, just walk around. Like in between talks, go take a leak. There's you're stall to stall. So what have you been thinking about? You can just like all these people that can have like a deep conversation at the drop of the hat and are like really open. What questions have you been wrestling with, man? Flush. All right, let's make that time. Like it was amazing. After the conference, I've kind of crawled into a hole, but I've got a lot of ideas, but part of why Substack's not really like it's not, it's not going to be a big financial thing for me. I'm not the kind of guy that can write a big successful Substack. I'm very slow. I'm not cranking stuff out super fast. And that's because I only write stuff when I really know it. And like know it, I'm pointing to my heart now. When like I only write from my depths, and that means not just cranking stuff out every day. I don't have a shtick that I just like do it that way. So I'm in a stage now where I'm like stuff is churning around inside, and I know it's not ready, so I'm not going to say anything. And when I'm ready, then I'll say things, and it'll be good.
And you've kind of accepted that or worked with that kind of those waves of internal, external for a while now. Have you kind of consciously known that for a while?
I don't know. Maybe I didn't know it until just now. I don't know, man. I don't know.
I think my journey with it has been I think I forgot that I was a creative person doing creative things that people thought were creative things anyways, and I lost that identity because I was just like trying to copy other people's art constantly, with these songs or whatever, and I was kind of resigned to that. And there were other things going on in my life that kind of cut me off from I think a true creativity, because like you said, if you're talking about truth, not facts, but you're talking about truth, which is like, I feel something that is right, that is resonant, that I think is true within me. And I'm going to share that. I think that is art. And have you listened to much of Rick Rubin on the internet? Some of his stuff. Do you know who he is? Y'all you look like a younger version because he's got this long white beard and kind of crazy hair. But he produced like a lot of he did stuff with a lot of hip hop. He did things with Johnny Cash. He did things with the Beastie Boys. He did he helped produce a lot of this iconic music that, in the last 30 or 40 years. And he wasn't good technically at anything, but he was good at trying to get people in tune with their self, or to get the sound to feel right, I guess. And that had a lot to do with just being able to be honest with himself and with others. And I think that's what I'm learning in this process is that's where I find like, what questions am I really interested in versus, and I think that there's, even in this process of like, people talk about audience capture. And I think you were even kind of hitting on this with your Substack. Like I developed, I could just lean into the Orthodox shtick and probably keep going, or I could be honest, and it might lose people at times. It's like, and that's something that I think with creativity that I'm figuring out is going after things that you honestly are interested in or want to have a conversation about or want to think about versus what you only think other people are going to be thinking, and I think that is where I found myself. So I think that is a deep part of creativity that I'm learning about. And I think I even asked you about this, months ago. I don't know if you remember. I was like, how do you get to that? There was a point in a conversation we had, but anyways, yeah, man. So, I mean, where do you feel like, or why do you feel, in our last conversation, we talked a lot about your spiritual journey. Why do you feel like the church can't figure some things out. Christianity can't figure something out. Like what? I don't know. Why does that churn and bring forth things for you? Because it seems like that has been a driving angst for a long time.
Yeah, that's a huge question. I wonder. I'll just have a question back. I just wonder how related it is to what you were just talking about. I mean, we're idealists, but imagine a scenario in which what it was to be church was to have this deep trust of reality, to where you just you don't repeat what you're supposed to repeat. You just really speak from, or keep silence from the innermost place. I wrote a little piece, and I kind of poached some of it for my talk at the conference. And that piece started like my talk did with a quote from Berdyaev about something about the great moral task of creativity is to destroy idols. And in that essay, the million petaled flower of being here, which is a great phrase from a poem of Philip Larkin's. That essay was about the difference between poetry and religiosity, or creativity in general and religiosity. And in that, I quoted from Orthodox monk Elder Porphyrios, who said, to be a Christian, you first have to be a poet. And he went on to say some regular monastic cliches. So I kind of stole that phrase of his and took it in a different direction. I don't think it said all what he was talking about. But in the essay, I wondered if, what if that were literally true? To be a Christian, you first had to be a poet. You got to be a poet first before you're even allowed to be a Christian. A poet in the sense of, and the way I interpret that was in the sense of, instead of repeating phrases that you've heard from other people because that's what you think you're supposed to do, what if you only spoke from your own experience? And that's really what poetry is. Instead of using ready-made phrases to describe reality and your experience, you go deep within and speak from your own experience. Let that come out. What if you had to first get to that point where you're able to just talk authentically? I'll just say, forget poetry, crazy, just what you're talking about, honesty, where you don't say anything except that it's coming from your own heart. What if that were the first stage? So that it was normal in Christian circles, in church, the way we do church, for people to just speak really with brutal honesty and deep authenticity, rather than hiding behind the jargon and cliche. So, and this is a glib answer, I suppose, but my questions, my critiques of the church, you know, largely have to do with language, and language shapes how we see the world, how we interact with the world. To me, it seems like one of the fundamental problems is that there's a culture in, certainly in Orthodoxy. I think it's true with other Christianity. I think it's true with all Christianities, except for maybe, who are the Quakers? Don't they sit around?
Mennonites and the Amish.
Yeah, people who sit around a circle and just be quiet, like they're in a different category. But certainly with Orthodoxy, like what you were saying at the beginning of the conversation, you know, like that right there is a very descriptive term, you know. And actually, it kind of, you know, that phrase, as I understand from Father Peter here, is like came from Constantine, basically, after the first council, where it's like, we're going to map out this language, and the people who are willing to use this language are the right believing bishops, and all who are not right believing, who are not willing to use this language in this way, they were deposed, you know. And so to use language in a certain way was how you belong to, you know, the world order, the empire, the church, the empire, you know, the one world order, like the big tribe. How you got to belong was your use of language. And so there's this culture of being sure to pass on, like, you know, pass the language test, you know, that you're willing to use these phrases in these ways. And so, and stretch that out over centuries, where you have people who are passing on language because that's what they need to do. And then those people pass on the same language, you know, and you get language that's very, very removed from actual, you know, your own experience. And you might not even know, because you're in this haze of language use. So, I mean, what a radical thing to just like cut through all that and just talk in a circle. And like, I don't know. I mean, what if being together as Christians was basically like estuary? You know, I know that's what Paul's trying to do. They do estuary before church. But like, what if that was the expectation, that like that's part of like deep communion is not just coming from successfully doing the rituals where the right words are used at the right time, and then the magic happens and you partake of the thing and the magic is imparted. What if, and that's kind of a cynical summary of something that's been very important to a lot of people for a long time. But what if the communion of being together as Christians was like knowing and being known? You know? like really, you have to learn to like speak from your heart, you know, like that's something you have to learn. That's hard. It's not easy. It doesn't just happen.
There's this phrase that I caught on to listening to this guy that kind of talks around these spaces named Jordan Hall, and he picked it up from a Polynesian culture that he tried to like integrate with at one point, which was talking story. And that's kind of what that makes me think about, you know, in kind of this tribal, even just sitting in silence, just passing the peace pipe or whatever. Like, we're not like, we're here, we're contemplating, but we're together, and that's something that's real. And then, you know, a word is spoken, an honest word, a true word. So yeah, I think that's lost. And again, I take that back to what is going on in these circles and these corners of taking Tamada on the road, taking estuary on the road, because it's funny because I just had a conversation with Joseph Lambrecht. Do you know Joseph on the internet? He was on that stream. Yeah. That he's an Orthodox guy. He was on that stream that you responded to me on.
I like that dude. Yeah.
So we just had a conversation, and he's just finished going through diaconate work for the church. And I guess my question is, where do these symbolic rituals fit though? Like, where does pageantry and drama within religious practice fit? Because I mean, I think that's a human thing too, you know, very human. Where be, and I don't have the answer. I think that, and I think that the problems that you're pointing at are real, and I agree with. And even in my little church journey that I'm on right now is is trying to just get like basically like 5 families around a table, to talk and be honest, get more and more to that honest place, and is more important than trying to evangelize my whole city. Like getting people's butts in the chair, reach, you know, with the gospel, which that's the world that I kind of come from, that I could critique all day long. So it's like, you know, but I still am curious, like where ritual and the helpful parts of memorizing a creed to help me organize my faith in a way that's coherent, you know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to push back. I'm just trying to, like, I don't know if you have thoughts on that. I'm interested. I'm curious.
Even if you are pushing back, that's good, man. That's maybe what I want. Yeah.
Did I change your mind on the spot?
Yeah. No, we absolutely need liturgy, ritual. I mean, ritual in general. I mean, even the conference itself was like, there's so much structure there that is just sort of implicit, but it's like, I mean, you have, it was basically like a temple that was the size of North America, and the way you walk into the temple is like you get in these like metal machines that hurtle through the air, and those are the doorways into the temple. And then the ritual inside was what allowed people to have this mental space where, I mean, how do you get 80 people to come from everywhere so that they could sit together in like first grade Sunday school classrooms with tiny plastic chairs and like total strangers, and to go in a circle and like just pour out like, this is how I'm suffering right now. Like, how do you that doesn't just happen, you know, this. And there was the ritual meal before all, you know, Nate's barbecue. That barbecue was amazing, man. Oh man, that was amazing. Like this, like eating together, and that's how it started. And there's a lot of conversation there, and it's kind of, you keep going further and further in. So all that structure was absolutely necessary to have that opportunity to just sit in silence with 5 other people. You know, that wouldn't just happen. Ritual is what is like a space, you know, space time that for encountering people who you otherwise would not encounter. What my critique or my question of, like, for example, the Orthodoxy that I'm used to is not of the ritual. It's that the rituals that we engage in outside of the liturgy are so strong that they overwhelmingly shape us, so that as soon as the liturgy is over, we'll kind of revert back to like what the rest of the world is doing. And it's almost like the liturgy didn't happen. So, for example, I mean, you know, Orthodoxy is great in that, unlike in a lot of places, you know, we have a common meal after the service, you know, like coffee hour. I don't call it coffee hour. I call it the agape meal. Everyone else calls it the coffee hour, right? But you know, it's like, hey, getting together and eating together. That's, you know, that's way better than, you know, you show up, listen to something, and then leave. You know, carry about your your day. Like that's a really, you know, if I may say so, a really degenerate way to think about spirituality. It's like this message that you consume and then you just go back to whatever. So, you know, we have a meal. That's great. But it's not like that. But the conversation is not at the depth of something like what estuary like would create. You know, it's like, we're not like crying and like pouring our hearts out, you know, just chatter. So the ritual should lead up to this moment of like total contact with other human beings, but it's sort of like not getting there. And I think that's partly because, well, there's a lot of reasons for it. Partly because the idea of communion as like pouring your heart out to someone and really deeply listening to them, that's not part of the culture. You know, that's a missing element in the culture of Orthodoxy, from what I can tell. You know, that would be something that you got to do elsewhere,
or our culture at large, because I do think that, like, to take the time to listen to somebody and encounter something you may not agree with or that you never heard there that makes you think is like, dude, I just want to get on with my life. Or like, you know, just why can't you just say the simple things that make this easy, that we can just pass through and move on with our lives? Like, you know, I think that is part of the culture within this estuary thing, is people have consumed a lot of, you know, a lot of philosophy, and philosophy is kind of this deep under, you know, the deep wisdom or the deep thoughts of reality. And that sometimes we just want to small talk our way through life because it's more difficult otherwise. Or again, you might, if you really come up in contact with somebody's deeply held beliefs, like deep thoughts, deep cares, deep desires, it could be uncomfortable, you know, because it might be different than yours. And then, or you might not know you might feel like you don't know what to say, or that kind of thing. And that's, I mean, part of this journey for me, the meme that I'm kind of putting out there, conversation craft, kind of fits in the milieu of all of this, because, you know, I didn't feel like, again, like people, like that ideal that you're like, well, coffee hour, I mean, it seems shallow, or our church small group, it seems shallow, you know, like sometimes like you find these, it's like, well, why and where do I go where it might not feel that way? And the place I had to kind of go was to the place where people were contemplating the deeper things of life. And then you could find them. And that's why I had to kind of jump into, you know, to this digital space. And so I know we've kind of like lost the thread on the creativity. We found ourselves back on the estuary. You know, Paul's going to be real happy about that. If he makes this far. But I guess I don't know, one of the questions that I had bubbling back around in my mind was, at what point, and I think you shared this in our last conversation, but what really broke? What broke you? What broke, you know, like Orthodoxy is a radical counterculture to the, you know, the American dream or something. You know, that was kind of your thesis in your book. But then what really, was there a moment where things kind of broke? Like, because I think that's what we're talking about. Is like something broke there, like painfully. And then that has driven a new wave of creativity in your life, like a new wave of I think, you know, it seems like. And we talked around it, but was there like a moment? Was there one thing, or was there like where things kind of crashed, or was it kind of more of just a building up, or once you got that book out, then did it seem like, I don't know, something, I don't know what I'm trying to aim at here, but it seems like there's
I love it,
something.
man. Yeah, there's definitely something. Let's see. One, I mean, there were, certain things where it was like I mean, I talked about last time COVID and going to live streaming. That was a moment where it was like this idea of I mean, I had this idea, which is very heavily promoted by other people who have this idea that that Orthodoxy is this, like, like the apostolic faith, once and for all, passed on without modification. There's that bumper sticker, Orthodoxy getting it right since AD 33 or something. like, yeah, there's this ideology that like this is how the apostles were acting and thinking. This is the spiritual culture they passed on, which like, and it hasn't been changed, and you just stick to it, and it's not going to change, and which is just, I mean, it's silly to even say it like that, because of course it's like really, in obvious ways, not at all true, not even close to true. And but I think COVID in a way snapped me out of that, because there was a very, very drastic and fundamental change in the nature of Orthodoxy that happened overnight, which is that the divine liturgy was something that you could consume over the internet. It was something to watch, and that's a complete alteration of the whole meaning of the divine liturgy, and it happened like literally overnight, and without nobody asked me. If I don't know who, and it was like almost universal. I mean, it wasn't just a few parishes; it was almost all of them, 2/3 at least. So that was like, oh yeah, Orthodoxy can change, and it can change very quickly, and it can change in like, not superficial but totally fundamental ways. Like that's a I mean, easy for me to say because I'm not a bishop. I'm not making decisions. I'm not responsible for anyone but my own family. But I'm just like, historically, the obvious response would have been like just meet in homes. That's what, like, in the Soviet persecutions, that's what the Orthodox people just have liturgies together in homes. Like that's kind of the default mode when things get tough. You just retract into homes. Like that's, I don't know why that didn't happen, but anyway, that's just an example of like this ideology about this unchanged and unchanging thing. That's like rock solid. Like it's just not true. But there's a slower process. And by the way, that wasn't like a temporary change. It seems like just for COVID. My church, we're still live streaming liturgy. It's like it's just been accepted that it is possible to have contact with the liturgy when you're not physically, in the temple. So that's an idea that has changed, and it seems to be here for good. The slower, a slower process is, I live in my own internal world. That's part of being so-called creative. By the way, I think everyone's creative. They just need space and silence to let it come out. But I don't think I'm special, but I do think I'm very creative. But I think everyone can be. I live internal world. I see things the way I want to see them, or, you know, the way I do see them. And in part, I had this like massive dream world that I came to Orthodoxy with, and wanted Orthodoxy to like support that and nurture that. And it, you know, that my internal world has often come into pretty significant conflict with the real world of Orthodoxy. But I think writing the book was like a desperate attempt, not desperate, but like an urgent, like a burning attempt to unify those two things, my internal world and the world of Orthodoxy, and kind of distill it into something like, okay, I can't accept all of Orthodoxy everywhere. I can't take responsibility for all of it. I don't relate to all of it, but let me grab a few things, put them all together in this here, and say it in language that connects to my internal world. And then like, here's where my Orthodoxy is going to be. And then I'll put it out in the world and like find other people to, you know, see me on that, to relate to me on that, you know, and that I can relate to them, you know, and find it, you know, use this creative work to find each other, basically. And so, you know, I was, super excited when people like, you know, Paul Kingsnorth, Martin Shaw, you know, like they saw something in it for sure. And I'm grateful for that. And other, you know, a lot of other people who are, you know, not known people, just normal people, like did relate to it. But at some point it became evident to me. I mean, I started to think that this is not really how Orthodoxy is. And I'm really just wanting to change Orthodoxy into something it's not, you know, like I got that feeling, and I can't identify when that moment was. And I don't even know if it's totally true or if that's the final word, but somehow I picked up that feeling, this like disillusionment or even like this feeling of chastisement, like I should stop messing with Orthodoxy, or I need to stop trying to make Orthodoxy into something that's palatable to me, or you know, I somehow picked up that feeling. Maybe, and I think I mentioned this before, maybe it was like hearing from readers who had never encountered Orthodoxy until they read my book, and then that gave them a vision of something, and then when they went to a church, it was like, it wasn't like that, man. It's like, I was like, oh, what, you know, like you use your creativity to put ideas out there, and you know, that actually affects people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that really answers your question.
Well, it's an interesting responsibility, and it's probably one I need to consider more in a certain way, because Alex O'Connor, he's a prominent atheist on the internet, or he would call himself probably an agnostic now, but he used to go by Cosmic Skeptic, and he started having his viewership, you know, basically be like, dude, you turned me into a nihilist. What now?
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't have answers for him. And he's like, oh, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, maybe I should think about this. You know, and if we're only thinking about that when we're trying to process art, then we might not ever make any, you know, but maybe you know, you beat the art that maybe it will mature your future art in a certain way, inform your future art in a certain way. But definitely that's something I was hearing in what you were saying, and it's fun to, I don't know, it's fun to hear the critiques of something that, you know, many people have found this, you know, oh, I found the one true thing, you know, and you know, growing up feeling like I was in like the thing or something, and then I can critique, you know, where I'm coming from easily as well. And but it seems like you're hitting on the idea of being a reformer, the idea of being a, you know, and I don't think that's necessarily bad, you know. Um, it's done a lot of things in the world, and the conversation I had with Joseph, actually, to your point about COVID and live streaming and technology in the church, like, it was easy to poke fun at the evangelicals and their use of all the lights and the sound and the technology, and be like, oh man, because I remember very specifically in 2000, it was probably 2008, and a buddy of mine was at this mega church out in South Carolina, and they were doing live streaming of their music, their rock music, and it was awesome. It looked good, it sounded good, all these things, and I was like, wow, like, that's incredible. And so, you know, the biggest evangelicals have been doing this for 20 years. And then he was talking about this conference. It was like a celebration of the Transfiguration. There was a big Catholic conference up in the Midwest recently, and I saw some clips from it, and you know, they had like it's like it showed these nuns were like singing this song written by this modern worship leader girl, you know, and there was a band off to the side, and there was like lights, and then there was this shot. I saw a picture of the Eucharist, and it had these, I don't know if they green or yellow lights, and it had smoke. If it was incense, I don't know. And you know, it's being streamed or being captured, and they probably got cameras. It's in a convention center, you know, and I was like, oh, that looks familiar. And then, you know, just hearing you talk about like pushing into live streaming. I had a conversation with a friend on here, Kale, about that experience for him as a Catholic. And, you know, so it's interesting to like, I don't even like watch, like if I'm not at church, I don't, oh, listen to the sermon. Oh, you know, I'm like, I don't know. No, thanks. Like I wasn't there. Like that. I've never, ever been a person that liked, I mean, I liked this live music. I thought that was cool. Music's a little different, you know, because it's kind of but the, you know, being there is part of the reality of it, I guess. And we've come back to that theme in this conversation a lot. And I don't know, it was interesting to hear you talk about that specifically to COVID, that, you know, whether it's the Eucharist or the Divine Liturgy, like you can't push it through this screen. And there's certain things that can, and I think that's it maybe to you, and something that I've been curious about is like, even in that conversation with Joseph, when he talked about the schism of his own, like Lutheran raising, and then the conservatives left, and they kind of built, you know, like a modern convention center church. And it's like there is a disbelief in the sacred. There is a disbelief in the sacrament that we're seeing in that. Like you can say you believe, but like what you believe is kind of what we do, you know, or it is, you know. And I don't know. That's the other part of it, is like, well, what is the sacrament? Is it the thing, or is it the being together? You know, like, which is kind of,
yeah. It seems like the disbelief is not so much in the sacrament as in the human person. I mean, the Catholics have the adoration of the Eucharist, you know, of the host, you know, in a golden thing. You can, you know, like at first it was, you could come into the church and kneel and, you know, adore the whole. And I'm sorry, Catholic friends out there, I'm the vocabulary is not, I'm not too versed in it anymore, but anyway, it's like you just watch it, you just adore, and that's, so it's not too many steps removed from that. I saw one of the actually the saddest thing I've ever seen on the internet I shouldn't say the saddest thing. I've wept at a lot of things I've seen on the internet. The bleakest thing I've ever seen on the internet was a live stream of a Eucharistic adoration. And so it was just a webcam focused on a wafer inside of a golden thing, and inside of a small empty room, and there was one person watching, which was me. So until I don't know why I came across this, but until then it was just the webcam was like adoring the host. Like, but that's a natural step from the idea that you can just look at the Eucharist from far, and you could trace historical development that makes all this seem like a natural thing in Catholicism. I would say. So, where I was going with that is like that's not a disbelief in the sacrament. I think it's like a very strong belief in the sacrament. Like, this thing is so real and so full of divinity that even if you look at it from long distance, or even if you look at it from an infinite distance over the internet, there's still power. There's still something happening. So I see the adoption of live streaming liturgies as it's not a waning of belief in sacramentalism. I see it as like a disbelief in the human person. Like, you don't even need to have people there. Like, just the thing, the magical thing, none of the magical. That's a bad word. The thing that's full of divinity. That's the main thing that needs to be there. And the Catholics have where you can a priest can celebrate the mass alone, and I think Orthodox had that for a while, and you got to have at least two people, I think. But like it's almost like a belief in the sacrament to the expense of belief in the person. Like, you don't. I mean, why isn't it that? Okay, for example, it's impossible to give birth over the internet, right? Like, there's some things, like, no matter how good the technology gets, like, it can only happen in person. I think that communion is like the coming together of people, the 2 or 3 gathering in the name of Yeshua to experience new life together. Like, is like that. Like, it simply cannot happen unless 2 or 3 are physically gathered in the same physical space. And there's, started the conversation talking about like this idea, like this experience of transfiguration, like the solidity, the beauty, just like exuding from people's faces and from their hearts. Like, you could tell that the rest of them were there, that it wasn't just their heads. Now their heads are there and it's three-dimensional shining. It's like the rest of their body is there, their hearts. Like, you can feel the presence of people's hearts. And in our estuary group, just sitting in silence, 5 people, was like overwhelming. There would be no meaning crisis if like you could just sit with 5 people and know them and be known, and sit in silence, like in deep, intimate silence. Like, none of this would exist. So I see it not as a disbelief in the sacrament. It's like a non-belief in the absolute like requirement of physical human bodies being together.
And the person, God in 3 persons, the person podcast. Luke Thompson would be very happy with your conclusion here. So,
well, then that makes me happy. I finally met Luke.
Yeah. The person.
We haven't hung out since, man.
The centrality of the person. Y'all should maybe pick this conversation up. Reach out to him. I know he's doing some conversations like one-on-one and stuff. So, dude, with that, man, kind of rounding out the conversation. This has been, it's been heavy. It's been heavy. I feel like, but I think that's okay. It is okay. And I hope I meet you in the depths of the heaviness of what weighs, of the weight of glory, maybe, to bring it back to the Protestant patron saint of Lewis there. And Yeah, man, dude, this was good. Hopefully someday we will get to embody physical space together and continue the relationship that way as well. And any last words, anything you got for me before we shut this thing down?
I just want to echo my desire to see you in the flesh, man. I'll give you a giant bear hug, man. But this was good. If we can't do that, this is the next best thing. And yeah, it was so good to get to talk with you.
All right, man. We'll see if it makes sense again in the future. I'm sure it will. All right, dude.
All right.
Hang around. We'll end this thing backstage. Hi, this is Christian Baxter, and you're listening to Yours Truly, a place we go to think out loud.